My grandmother arrived in America from China with nothing. She couldn't speak English, she had no money, and in 1952, she and my grandfather opened a restaurant. Over the next 50 years, they built one of the most popular restaurants in Northern California. I eventually sold my company for multiple seven figures. But this story doesn't start with me, it starts with them. This is part one of a three-part series about how two guys with no business experience, no investors, and less than $2,000 in capital built two separate brands from nothing, and then subsequently sold them in a multi-million-dollar acquisition. There's no fluff, no highlight reel. This is the real version. When I was 10 years old, my parents sent me to work in my grandparents' restaurant, the Far East Cafe in Redding, California. My friends were going to the mall, watching movies on the weekends, and I was peeling 50-pound pegs of potatoes. At 10 years old, I hated it. Looking back, it was one of the most valuable educations I could have received. Over the next 6 years, I worked through every role. I was a janitor, a dishwasher, a waiter, a short order cook, and while I was doing all of that, I was watching how my grandmother moved through the kitchen, how my grandfather handled a difficult customer, how they made decisions without a business school playbook or a team of advisors. They ran their restaurant for over 50 years. They never outsourced the hard stuff, and there was no task beneath them. And they did it without speaking much of the same language as most of their customers. The restaurant closed in 2004 when they retired, but what they gave me didn't go with it. There are three things that I learned from them that I only fully understood years later. The first is don't have an ego. When you run a business, you have to be willing to mop the floors. The day you think a task is beneath you is the day your business begins to struggle. And number two, know your why. They weren't building a restaurant. They were building a life for their family in a country that hadn't fully accepted them yet. That kept them going for 50 years on those early mornings and those late nights. And number three, document the journey. They didn't take many photos, but I wish they did. Don't make the same mistake. I wish I had done a better job of documenting my journey as an entrepreneur while building my own company. So with that foundation, I went to the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada, to study accounting. Not because I had a burning desire or passion for debits and credits, but because I wanted financial freedom, and I didn't know how to get there yet. The big four accounting firms had a heavy presence on campus. They came in promising prestigious careers, high salaries, and letters behind your name. I got pulled in like many of my classmates. I landed a summer internship at PricewaterhouseCoopers, now known as PwC. And when I got accepted, I felt like I'd won something. $38,500 as a starting salary. I was going to be an associate in their audit and assurance practice. And the moment I accepted, I felt uneasy. But I buried it. I told myself the letters behind my name would make it worth it. And the salary would eventually make the discomfort go away. I didn't tell anybody, and I just kept moving forward and hoped that the feeling wouldn't follow me. But it did. Over the next year, during the infamous audit busy season, I spent sometimes up to 90 hours a week working. And somewhere in the middle of that, I did what most accountants would do. I did the math. I divided what I was earning by the number of hours I was actually working, and the numbers were humbling. And I realized even if I climbed to the top of the path with all my hard work and all my time, it wasn't going to get me to the financial freedom that I was looking for. It was going to get me to comfortable, and there was a big difference. I also wasn't sure I'd survive it mentally or physically long enough to find out. I left PwC thinking the problem was actually in the firm. I moved to the mining industry for more money, but I was still unhappy. I tried commercial banking, managed a portfolio of struggling businesses, and thought that being near entrepreneurs would scratch the itch, but it didn't. After years of chasing the financial reward and hoping the feeling would follow, I finally accepted it wasn't going to. But here's what I had done right, almost by accident. The entire time I was in those jobs I hated, I lived below my means. I kept my expenses low, I saved aggressively, and I built a war chest. Enough runway that if I ever wanted to take a risk, I could. That decision, living frugally while I was miserable, is what actually made everything possible. And I was terrified of what people would think. I'd worked this hard to get a CPA, to get into the big four, and to build the career trajectory that everyone around me respected. And I was about to walk away from it all. I was also ending a 5.5-year relationship. And I want to be careful about how I address this because it wasn't anyone's fault. She wanted to settle down, start a family, and begin a stable life. And those are beautiful things to want, but I still had a burning desire to see the world, to move, and to build something that I couldn't quite see yet. We were at just different parts and different points in our lives, and staying together would have meant asking both of us to compromise and be people that we weren't. Leaving wasn't dramatic, and it was just honest, the first honest thing I'd done in years. When I got home after taking a leave of absence from the bank, my parents asked me one question. Not, are you sure? Just, are you going to be okay financially? Vancouver's an expensive city, and coming from a working class family, financial stability was something always top of mind. And here I was, voluntarily stepping back into uncertainty. Now, I understood their concern. I also knew something that they didn't know yet, that 3 months living out of a backpack was about to show me that I didn't need much to be fine. So I bought a flight. 3 months, Tanzania, Egypt, Jordan, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and India. I went looking for my true north. What I found was simpler than I expected. Living out of a backpack for 3 months, I realized I didn't need much to be happy. The salary, the title, the apartment, I was fine without them. More than fine. And that realization reframed everything. If I could live on very little, I could live frugally. And if I could stay frugal, I had runway. And if I had a runway, I could take a calculated risk on building something that would eventually allow me to have the time and the financial freedom I'd been looking for by chasing all those wrong doors. And the trip didn't hand me the answer. It showed me that I didn't need as much as I thought to go find one. I came home, I submitted my resignation. I wasn't going to go back. Co-founder Derek and I'll introduce him properly in the next video, tried to build a fitness brand on Amazon called Resistance Labs. Balance pads, resistance bands, agility ladders, private label products sourced from China. We spent a few $1,000s and contributed a lot of hours, and then it failed. But here's what I want you to understand about that failure. We didn't come out with nothing. We came out knowing how to research products, evaluate competition, source from overseas suppliers, and iterate what was already on the market. Those weren't small skills. They were exactly what we needed for what was to come next. The failed business was the education, and it actually cost us a fraction of what an actual business school would have charged. And through all of this, the pressure was manageable. Not because I was fearless, but because I had done the work before I took the leap. The frugal lifestyle, the savings, the runway I'd quietly built while sitting in jobs I hated. That was now the thing that was keeping me in the game. Financial pressure forces bad decisions. I'd removed as much of it as I could before I ever needed to. One night, Derek showed up to our regular board game night with something that his wife, Tina, had been making at home. It was kombucha, home brewed in their apartment. He handed me a bottle and I tasted it. It tasted exactly like the $6 bottle of kombucha I bought from a health food store. I looked at him and asked, how much did it cost you to make this? And that was the beginning. In part 2, I'll show you exactly how we went from that conversation to a business doing millions in revenue. Built out of our apartments, then a tiny garage with no washroom through a global pandemic across 13 different time zones. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And drop a comment below. What's the thing you're staying in right now that you already know it isn't right for you? I read every one.